All right, yo dogs, what's happening to you here from the shop? Super stoked for tomorrow's pre-order on our deer hide westerns. I've had a bunch of people asking me just general questions. One being, what's the difference between the pigment free hide and a pigment hide? So over the last week, I've been posting quite a bit about our 1mm T-Core chores, which is finished with a pigment. Think of it almost like a paint, like a top layer of heavy pigment that gives the color. So these shirts actually have no pigment on them, and so the color is actually all the way through. So you see the full grain of the hide. Like I keep saying, we're not trying to hide any scars in these hides because we can't cover it with paint. It's a pigment-free finish, so you're gonna see all the scarring, all the marks on the actual hide. Where if we take like the pigment finish pull-up horse, if I take a knife to it and scratch this, you'll see that that pigment finish will wear off and it'll actually show the core of the leather. So front and back, and underneath that pigment finish, you can see the brown. Where if I take that same knife and I scrape the deer hide, you don't see any real difference between the top and what's underneath that top layer of the hide. Another question I keep getting asked, 1.6mm. Last week, a lot of people addressed the 1mm of the T-Core hides, thinking 1mm is really thin, and yeah, 1mm is pretty thin, but when you're talking about a horse hide, when you compare a 1mm hide in a horse hide to the 1.6 on the deer, you can see how much thicker this is. But horsehide is a lot more fibrous, I guess. Like it's just a lot tighter, heavier, kind of more rigid hide, where the deer is just super soft and supple. That said, when I first got this, very similar to the T-Core hides, they're a little bit more squared off when you first get them. They haven't got really a lot of shape into it. So like the horse hides, this jacket did, or I'm gonna call it a jacket just for the sake of argument. So this piece, I'll call it a piece. This piece does still require some break-in. When I first got it, it did feel just a little bit wide and didn't have a lot of shape into it, but after wearing it, it starts to shape around you a little bit more. That's when you start to get a really great piece. A lot of people ask me how this hide has aged. I have worn this a ton. I've got it wet a bunch of times. Deer hide does take on water a lot. If you're planning on wearing it in the rain, just know it will suck in all the water. It's almost like one of those sham wows or like the Bounty quicker picker upper. A pigment finish, water seems to sort of deflect off this because like I say, it's a pigment finish, which almost like seals the leather off. So water will shed off this a lot easier than with this. Pigment free equals porous, raindrops, right onto it. But it doesn't watermark up or anything like that, but over time, it is starting to show signs of just wear. It's off-white, so it's gonna get dirty. For me, I like that. I love when pieces show the life that you've put into them. I don't like things to stay pristine for very long, so sort of like a wabi-sabi sort of mentality. I like when pieces show the age. I love that leather does that. Things like our natural saddle horse pants just showing so much age and everything you've ever done in them. I've got a bunch of comments from people saying that there's nothing better than like that process. And a lot of guys will get a vintage jacket, which looks really amazing, but there's nothing quite like putting your own story into a piece. And these lighter color leather pieces really will show the life that you've lived in them. Every trip, everywhere, every time you're out in them, something new sort of pops up on it. One other thing that people have pointed out, so the backside of my personal piece is a one piece. In development of a product, you kind of figure things out as you go along, and our first sample, we did a one piece back on these, but to avoid a lot of the scarring that is on the deer hides, we've mentioned this before, they're a very small hide, and deer, the way they're split, they always have a string of scars that run up the back side of them, and that section is what we need to use for this large panel on the back of the jacket. So to avoid using the biggest scars that are on the hide, what we've done is we've actually split it like we did on our chore jackets to make those two panels a little bit smaller and allow us to avoid that string of big scars and put it together. I'm 6'1", 185 pounds. I wear a size 42. I wear 42 across the board in all of the shirt-based cuts from Y2. That's our scar chore, our work shirts, the Western shirts in both steer hide and horse. This one is really soft, so it does give you a little bit more room than say our horsehide one, which is definitely stiffer and requires some more break-in time. I typically wear a 40 in North American jackets. I wear a 40 in a shot, 40 across the board in most of the Y2 jackets. In Ironheart, I wear a size large in the Western shirts. Again, 6'1", 185 pounds. I do prefer things to be on the little bit more snug side and kind of stretch out, but yeah, these will be available tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the shopvancouver.com. This is the off-white pigment-free deer hide Western in the 1.6 millimeter deer hide. Available only at the shopvancouver.com. If you got any questions, hit me up, 604-229-2134, and we'll get you dialed. Love you guys. Talk soon. Bye.